You're joking. Not another one?
Hi and welcome to Not Another HR podcast. I'm Rachel Rigg from Horsfield Menzies.
I'm Alastair Swindlehurst from Easy HR.
And thank you for joining us. We've got a few things we want to cover off today, but before we launch into it, this is not legal advice, so please go and get a lawyer and speak to them about your specific issues if you need legal advice on any of these issues. And everything we're talking about today is accurate as of today, but if you're listening to it in the far distant future, it might not be relevant anymore.
Yes. So now, have you been?
All right, yeah, busy, always. Yeah. I've got DSARs coming out of my nose, ears, everything else. It's, you know.
Oh, DSARs are up there with grievances at the minute. It's absolutely bananas. I think it's funny because we see quite, because we do a lot of grievances, and when we get into some of the contentious stuff, you'll see the DSAR land, you'll see the grievance land, and then you get the kind of, we're going to take you to tribunal.
Oh no!
Oh no!
We'll see in 5 years.
Yeah, well, that's the funny thing. That it's like, because we've done a couple of settlements recently, and part of our negotiation strategy, I think I've said before, is like we're saying to people now, like, this is the offer.
Yeah.
We're more than happy to wait multiple years to kind of get to tribunal. We'll defend it.
Yeah.
So it's very much as a you can have the money now. You can, like, it's almost like Jim Bowen on Bullseye. You put the cash in, and now it's like you've got that now.
If only you had the music and the lighting just to make it a bit more dramatic.
I've probably got the size of a darts player, to be fair. So it's or we'll wait till whenever we get listed. And but I would say that we've generally done all right in terms of, I used to sort of pride ourselves on not getting a huge amount of tribunal requests through. But certainly the last 18 months, it's kind of people have just gone, it's like all bets are off and it's gone bananas. Yeah. But you're also, but again, you're also seeing at the backlogs as well.
I mean, this is it. It's one of those things we've been speaking to clients about where they're like, our goal as a HR department is to drive down our number of tribunals. And I'm like, it's actually a good strategy for you. Obviously, if you can get rid of them, you can get rid of them.
Yeah.
But if not, sit back and lean in. See you in 3 to 4 years.
But I don't like. It's like the whole kind of like, you want your grievances down, you want your disciplinaries down, you want your tribunals down. That's not always the right metric to look at. So I say to, like, when we're dealing with issues and they go, I don't want to get to a grievance with this person, I'm saying sometimes it's the best thing you can do.
Yeah.
Because what you'll see is that there'll be a back and forth. The relationship's clearly getting cooked at that point, and it's like they're hanging it out in front of you, going like, "Ooh, isn't this awful?" Whereas actually, if you actually say to that person, "I'm going to take that, we're going to hear it properly, and actually address it," what it prevents them doing is actually kind of putting that out in front of you, and going, like trying to use it as the bogeyman.
This is my favourite thing with DSARs, where someone's like, "I'm putting in a request." It's like, thanks. We are a responsible data controller that deal with requests all the time. We will respond in the ordinary course. Thank you very much. Now what?
Yeah. It's just like, it's bonkers. Although the one thing I'm not, on the DSAR stuff, the one thing I'm not seeing at the minute is people responding to the new bits that came in that we talked about before.
The right to complain.
And I think that right to complain, where people can now complain, we're not seeing people kind of join the dots in terms of getting that policy together as well.
No. I mean, there's lots of other stuff to worry about. I mean, one of the things we want to talk about today is really something that's much more kind of operationally forefront of mind, right?
Yes. So the 1st of July has happened.
1st of July has happened.
If you follow anything on LinkedIn, that people have you believe that the world fell in as of the 1st.
It just, everything stopped.
It did, because they went, employment rights act.
Oh my! Do you know that everyone's still calling it the Employment Rights Bill, by the way, because it was the bill for so long that people have stopped calling it the Act.
Yeah.
Or just never started. But anyway.
I don't think they've never called it the Act, because it's the bit where I remember we got chastised by a very technical solicitor that, and they were like, no, and I got chastised. I was like, oh yeah, it is the Act. No, it's not the bill. Yeah,
but we already had an Employment Rights Act, so you know.
Yeah, but
they could have come up with something. Rebrand, guys. You could have called it anything more jazzy. There's not even brackets in it. Like, you know. No, but anyway, 1st of July has happened, and so that means people are on a bit of a countdown clock now for 1st of January. Any new hires that you've made from the 1st of July onwards, will have the benefit of 6 months unfair dismissal rights when they come into January 2027.
Yes, and I think there's a couple of things from my side in terms of, I think the bigger businesses are more well equipped for this. Certainly the smaller businesses that we're speaking to. I think one, they either don't know what's happening at all. I think there's still a few people that think that actually because I recruit this person before January, we'll
worry about it next year, you know?
We can still use that 9-month probation period in March next year.
Yeah.
And I'm not going, no. That doesn't work.
I want to clear up a bit of a misconception on this probation period front because everyone's panicking about probation periods, which they do need to in terms of managing performance and things. But actually, probation periods in contracts only change the amount of notice you give someone. That's kind of irrelevant here. Well, you might want to factor it in, but it's not going to be the be-all and end-all. We're really talking about managing people who aren't doing well in that period, really, calling it probation.
And I am... help's the wrong word, but I'm getting quite focused on probation periods, but only for one reason. And that for me is that a lot of people, and we'll come back to this later, but people don't manage probation periods particularly well.
No.
So I'm encouraging people to have a 6-month probation period, and it's a week notice during that period of time, or 2 weeks. Because what we'll tend to see is that you will get busy with other stuff, and that new employee that hasn't really kind of done fabulously well, they're kind of the least worst of your problems.
Yeah.
So you kind of get to the end of month 5 and you go, oh shit, it's the end of the probation soon. So it just we're still seeing people get advice of 3 months plus 3 months.
Yeah.
Also, for clarity, it's 3 months probation period plus a 3-month extension. You're actually you're painting yourself into a corner that way. And that's a real kind of tricky thing, but we'll come back into that more detail later on. But that probation for me is I don't understand why people are going, well, we're going to do a 3-month probation period and then we've got a 3-month extension if you need it. It's like, don't need to do that.
We love seeing active management being a quarterly check-in and being like, yeah, we should sack them. But anyway, so starting at the beginning of the employment relationship now and the things that we need to be thinking about, people are going to have these abilities to bring an unfair dismissal claim, which may or may not be a good thing. It might get rid of a lot more discrimination complaints that are more, tenuously formed when people can just genuinely challenge it through unfair dismissal.
Yeah.
But one of the things you've got to start thinking about is your recruitment process and who you're bringing in. So recruitment doesn't really sit with employment lawyers unless there's discrimination involved. We do such a good job, I don't know what you mean. And then, so what are you telling people about what makes a successful recruitment exercise?
Well, first of all, it's not a one size fits all. I think it's more about changing from where you are to what you want in the future. I think there's a huge issue where, because of the fact that you've had the two year short service dismissal window, people have always felt fairly comfortable that actually, if I get the hire wrong, I've got such a run off that actually I can, with a degree of relatively inexpense, we can exit that person fairly swiftly. So I would say that a lot of people haven't invested hugely in the time they spend with a person. Mm-hmm. If we're being rude, it's more about kind of, have they got a pulse? Are they not too much of a weirdo? And they've not really sought to sort of test and interrogate kind of who a person is, what behaviours they have. One of the things that we've done recently, and we've seen it through kind of maybe poorer hires at a senior level where it's been quite expensive, and we've encouraged people to think about what you want to test and interrogate. So certainly if you bring in someone at a senior level, one of the things I've always said to people is that you want to take people out of their not social norms, but you want to get them beyond small talk.
Yeah.
So I'm an advocate for you take someone out either for dinner for the evening, so you take them out for 4, 5, 6 hours, not with a view of going out and getting them sort of all bleary-eyed.
Getting past that, having a coffee for an hour, full, everyone showing up game face.
Yeah. And it's anyone can do that. For even, I'd say 2 to 3 hours, you'll get someone and they'll smash it. Whereas I think if you put them in different environments and actually you say, come out, let's go out for dinner, you force people into different types of small talk, you'll see how they react. There's other smaller interactions that go on. Mm-hmm. So one thing, we talked to one client about this, and one of the things they talked about was actually taking someone to a trade show and actually they could see how they would deal with some of the other colleagues, how they deal with potential suppliers and things like that.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was really smart, and I think it's putting people in those situations. And this isn't for every hire. I'm talking more senior people that you're really going to make sure that those are right. But I think that premise works for kind of what you need to do. So we're saying to people, like, really understand kind of what you're looking at from what's important to you and what do you need to explore, and that's whether it's skills or behaviour.
Yeah.
And a lot of it comes down to behaviour. You know, if you've not got the skills, you don't get it through the door for an interview in the first instance. So really understand what behaviours are key to you and what the red lines. So how are you then going to sort of interrogate what those behaviours look like? So how do you put them into situations? And but I think it's that two-way street. So I think the interesting thing would be, one, it's doing longer interviews, it's taking things to different places, it's shifting questions as well. Mm-hmm. So I was always an advocate. So I used to work in outsourcing when I worked in house. And one of the things when we used to recruit for program or project directors was I would ask them about when a project went wrong. Because no project or program ever goes to plan.
No.
So the view, if by asking them how things went wrong, what you were looking for is a couple of things. One, if they said that nothing ever went wrong, you knew that they were kind of fluffing you. Yeah. At that point, you kind of go, and you don't want that. You need to know reality. If you've got someone who went all the time and I love it and it's brilliant and I love the rough and tumble of it, you kind of say, like, well, you're a bit.
Rough and tumble's fine, but all the time. Yes,
and that's you've probably got someone who's a little bit too comfortable with chaos. And then the third one would be someone who, who actually kind of goes, well, this is how I stay in control, but obviously things happen that you can't control, and they talk you through it, and it's interrogating things that way. So the minute we have this fault, we have the danger of going like, so tell me how amazing you are.
Yeah. Or what I love is the whole office bit that's like, what's your greatest weaknesses? But it's like, being amazing is my greatest weakness. It's just so difficult for me to function in this way.
Honestly, if we get that I don't see people again.
No.
With that.
I'm a perfectionist. I'm just so good at my job. But no, and a lot of it is about cultural fit, right? Just as you say, skills, etc., to get you through the door for your role. Fine. You can look at qualifications. You can look that someone has the history and the experience you need. But if they're going to come in and not fit in with what you're doing, the difficulty with this kind of probation period change and the shorter amount of time for bringing these claims is more the people who are. They're not bad, but they're not the best fit.
Yeah, and I would say, like, most people who go in a short service dismissal window are people that it's behaviours that get them out because they're not the right person for the business. Like one of the things we're encouraging people to do is get them in to meet the team, make sure they fit in the right way. So, and again, without making it all about me as I normally do, years ago I got offered a job with Safestyle UK. And it was the weirdest interview experience in the world. So I had my initial interview, and then they brought me back, and there was a guy who was ex-JLR, who then proceeded to start an argument with me. It was the most confrontational interview I've ever had. And
Did they want you to get the job?
Well, that was the part, because it's quite a confrontational environment. Now, I'm not an advocate for this, but I kind of agree with the way of...
Stress test it.
Yeah, and it's the methodology I get. I wouldn't have done it in that particular way. So basically, they kind of found any chinks in what I was... This guy, who's a very intelligent guy, was finding any chinks in what I could say, and then we're just picking it apart, and what they were looking for was how I would react and how I would deal with someone going after me.
And how did you react?
Well, I walked out, and I was like, you walk out, and you like, the adrenaline's going, and you're just like... What happened there?
I feel like I've had 10 rounds.
It was. I was like, I feel alive, which is not good for me. But I did feel like I just played like a game of rugby or something like that. It was really quite weird. But what was more, and I had to be taught. They wanted me to come back for another interview, and we did like 3 or 4 rounds. And the final round was like they put lunch on for me. They took me around the offices. I met every department, and they were really trying to court me at that point. But what was really interesting, there was a room where all the sales guys sat. So if you know Safestyle UK, it was the very aggressive sales tactics at that time. So it's probably around about 2010ish. And basically, I was said, like, you can't go in that room. So the rest of the business you would be involved with, but you can't go in that room. And that for me sealed it for me. I just went, I can't. If that's the bit where that's the worst part of your business. And this is the thing I think with investing time. Now, indirectly, they kind of showed me the best way of doing it, and I was a massive advocate for kind of approaches like that after that point. But if you show people the good and bad of your business, you'll make a good hire, because again, as much as you're trying to interrogate them to say, are you the right fit for us?
Yeah.
If you've got a very unique way of working, which actually isn't for everyone's palate, and they come in and find out that actually you've sold them the dream, or you've sold them a pup.
Completely different in reality. Yeah.
And that's the other thing as well. We see a lot of people who will recruit people and they will lie to people because there's.
And then you see them back in the recruitment game like 3 months down the line where they're, trying to fill the same role.
Yeah, but it's companies lie because actually they get seduced by the person. And they go, actually, I really want this.
I want to win you in.
Yeah. And actually, if I tell you the truth, you won't want to come to me.
But they will step over the threshold at some point and come to learn what it is.
Yeah, but then it's almost like this bit. It's like, it's too late. We've snared you.
Yeah.
At that point, and you're in my trap. But that is the worry with this, and I think it's you've got to. I think as much as there's a testing the person you're trying to recruit, there's testing your own realities as well about what you want and what you expect.
But also, business needs to understand itself properly to be able to engage in that process meaningfully, right? So, let's say it's a sort of medium-sized business where HR has farmed the job of recruitment without really understanding, to some extent, how that role sits in the business and what's really being looked at there. There's a real self-reflection, self-analysis, deep dive that needs to happen for someone to successfully recruit in that role.
Completely, and I think there's a bit of when we do a lot of people like they want to create these super duper jobs and actually everything to be amazing.
Yeah.
And there's a fear of telling people actually some jobs that you've got to do, certainly if you're an earlier business, is that people are multi-tools. And actually you've got this main part of the job, but actually you've got all this other stuff here, there and everywhere, which you have got to have no ego about, and you've just got to crack on and just deal with it. And
the right fit will love that sort of challenge. Like, this isn't to say that these are things that universally people will turn down or anything like that. There'll be the right fit that goes, oh yeah, I love transformation projects. I love being involved in driving something in this way. Completely.
And like we were with some startups this week and we're saying like, you'll hit a point where the business will overtake that person, but it's exactly that point. But it's explaining and talking to that person about kind of what it means and what that space looks like as well. So I think recruitment-wise, we've really got to you've got to be, shit-hot's probably the wrong word, but you've got to take it a lot more seriously. Because if you don't, you are going to run into trouble.
Yeah. Okay. So recruitment.
Yeah.
You've made your hire. Someone's come into the business.
Yes.
Onboarding. Is there anything particularly you think employers need to be thinking about?
Massively, and I think onboarding is going to completely change. So again, if we look at the majority of companies, they will allow someone to come in and sort of, the way I describe it is luxuriate in the business, where they will come in, they'll have a bit of a program of stuff to do. It's like, go and see these people, go on these, but there's no pressure at the front end, and I think there is people have got to change their approach to how do we actually bring someone on, how do we get them up to speed as quickly as possible. I think to factor probation, and probation is going to be something different. And whether you call it something different, like sort of, without sounding too sort of HR nonsensy.
Oh, what's going to come out now?
Like success plans.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And to be honest, language doesn't matter. It's what works for you in your business. But people have got to come in and sort of say, right, in 6 months' time, this is what I need to see.
Yeah.
And this is what we need to see as outputs. Now, I think there's a danger in terms of one employee's wanting the moon on a stick. I think the conversation we come around to a lot is, say, with senior hires or certainly sales positions, which is a new sales role.
Yeah.
It's going to take you multiple months, if not a year, to fill a pipeline if your pipeline is empty. So how do you go around testing that? But this is where the behaviours piece comes in. So if you look at if we talk about kind of understanding what behaviours you want part of the recruitment process, this should feed into the onboarding process. So onboarding is, how do I get this person, what's the shortest time to competency for the person? What do they need to know for the job? What do they need to know? What behaviours do they need to basically get triggered? Yeah. And then what tools do they need to deliver what they need to? There's none of this effing around sort of, where people come out going, well, they need access to this, or I could do with that. Just give people what they need. Yeah. And if you can't afford to give them what they need, is that the right role that you need in the business?
So you've got to equip them and you've got to bring them in. But what we're seeing, and I know we'll touch on this, I mean, it might be bleeding into it now, as probation periods now change, so regardless of what the notice entitlement is for however long you need that to be the case, people now have this shorter window to be able to demonstrate. But no, so look, people have a shorter amount of time in which they need to be measured against.
Yep.
It is before a longer process kicks in, right? So starting at onboarding, so your recruitment sets the picture for the firm and the reality of the role in a way that's a genuine matchmaking experience, right? Rather than like there's no catfishing going on here. So you've selected your strong candidate, you think they're the best fit for the role, you're onboarding them, and at this point, managers need to be actively almost treating it like a performance review from this stage, and also factoring in questions like, we're going to equip you with X, Y, Z so you can do the role. But what do you need from us, i.e. adjustments, i.e. training, support, etc., that sets you up to be able to do that? Because there's no point doing this process for someone to have to be performance managed in 6 months and then they go, oh, by the way.
Yeah. So the adjustments bit's quite an interesting one. So we've had conversation. I think did we have this conversation?
Possibly.
I talked about having like so when you bring people in, there's almost a conversation about kind of how you perform best in what you do. So it's a way of indirectly kind of asking someone, are you sort of neurodivergent, or and if you are, kind of how do we then structure your day to make sure that you operate in the right way? So if you're taking meds first thing in the morning, and it's eliciting that information as quickly as possible. So again, if it always sounds like being really negative, but if you are dealing with that type of situation, you can put some meat on the bone.
Yeah, it's what you always say about curiosity. Show up with curiosity. Yeah. You know, everyone wants this to succeed. No one is here trying to make this fail.
Yes.
And so, but we all need to be transparent about the tools we need to make it succeed, whether that's adjustments or, you know, whatever it is you need to equip someone in the business to perform in that role in the way you want them to.
So I think if you can go in there and sort of that opening position of, let's talk about, it's this defining the two-way street. So this is what we expect of you. How do we then enable you to do this? Yeah. So what do we need to do to get you to that point? Now, that's the amount of people that we speak to where they just completely forget about like probation period. And I'm not looking at probation period, a probation period shouldn't be a negative thing. No. But it has become this thing, and it's like satisfactory in a performance review. It's like, you know what I mean? You can see it's the worst thing in the world. And it has become this thing that it's only ever an issue if you have a probation meeting. Yeah. Because it just kind of passes by in the distance. And that's why I say there's almost to a degree changing the language around this, because you want to sit down with someone and go, there is a world in which we live in terms of these are the standards that we expect. I'm going to sit down with you, and this is your roadmap for 6 months. Yeah. And these are what we think that you need to be doing, and they need to be realistic. It's all the smart stuff, as much as people hate smart.
Hate smart. Be great at your job. Nailed it.
But the other thing about that is also about bringing it to life. It's about that. What's that? When I was in projects, a lot we used to talk about critical success factors. So actually, if you're talking about what you need to see, feel, or do at certain points, what should you be seeing at certain points? Now, I think there's 2 points. One, it gives people something to work towards, and they know if they're not hitting that they're going to be that they need to pull the socks up.
Yeah.
But it also gives you something to work towards as well, which a lot of people, we talk to a lot of people about kind of spidey senses.
I was not expecting that.
Yeah, but when you chat to people, certainly when you talk about kind of like short service dismissals and you talk about probation issues, they'll feel something's not right in the bones. They've not because one is they've not interrogated that, they've not spent enough time with that person. Yeah. But they can just sort of see things aren't quite balancing and behaviours aren't quite right, and you can see them going. It's just I said, your spidey sense is going a bit like yes. But as daft as it sounds, it kind of it's
you're bang on.
Yeah, and people get it, and I think, but because of where we're at, we need to accelerate that now.
So this is the shift. This is the shift that this law brings in, and we were talking about this kind of jokingly before we started recording today. But a 2-year qualifying period for unfair dismissal has given a really big lapse point for employers to not have to actively manage good recruitment, onboarding, and probation review processes. And so now it's 6 months. It's not about how good your lawyer is. It's not about how good your HR advice is. It's all on that manager to be able to say, this is what I expect, exactly like you say, I've mapped it, this isn't quite meeting that, the spidey sense is going, and how do I intervene to make sure this is a success? And if it can't be a success, what am I going to do about it? Yeah. So realistically, if you've got 6 months as a qualifying period for unfair dismissal, you can't do it at 6 months. You have to really regular intervention, sort of 60, 90-day review. But we're saying to people, you shouldn't be concluding probation decisions actively, and by, it needs to be done by about month 4, month 5 at a push. Yeah. But you need to have been on it the whole time. Gone are the days of, I'm just going to sit back and wait and see what happens and then just make a call.
But I think we do a lot of training with people around about kind of, certainly early stage businesses around about probation period. One of the things I say to people is that if you ever want to have a conversation with someone, a real honest conversation, when someone first comes into your business, one, they're super engaged and they want to be there. You've also got someone who's got a fresh pair of eyes that will give you some insight in your own business at that point, and they'll give you some feedback to basically say, this is what you told me we're going to get, but this is what I've seen and what I've experienced as well. And I think if you have that open discussion, there's a lot that you can find out.
100%.
And they want that engagement because they want to be told kind of how do I become really successful. And 99% of people come into a business, they want to do well, they want you to do well, and they want it to be an amazing success. Yeah. So I don't feel people start off there. Where we see people fall off is where they're left to their own devices. They lose confidence. You can see, and that's the bit. That's the other bit. Is like a lot of probations and short service dismissals are people that've been left to their own devices, and we'll have conversation. They'll go like, they just can't get the confidence back because they've not won over the team. They've got an awful relationship with the
silence as a whole is so different. How can you benchmark that to be like, am I doing great? Am I doing terribly?
Yeah, but that's the issue. They've been left to their own devices because people can see that they're not doing particularly well. And actually, it's not the worst issue they need to deal with at that point. And it's like, well, and I think subconsciously people go, I know I'm going to get rid of them at some point in the future, but they can carry that team or carry that job till a point in the future.
It's good enough for now.
Yeah, and then what we'll do is we'll deal with that when I've got time and a mind.
And it just can't be like that now.
No. And I think that's the bit where if you keep on going at that, if we maintain what we're doing in that space, it's going to get very, very costly very, very quickly. Yeah. I think the other bit as well with it, we've seen some people who are nervous around it and they're saying about, because this is fixed term contracts. So rather than recruit people on permanent contracts, we're just going to go. Everyone's on a fixed term contract, which I've just gone. That's mental.
And it achieves nothing. No. Because if the fixed term contract is longer than 5 months, they've got unfair dismissal rights. Yeah. This is something people have always been really confused by. This, that you can bring someone in on a fixed term contract even now, and they have unfair dismissal rights at 2 years, even though they know when their contract's ending.
And I think it's the other bit. The fixed term contract needs to be for a specific means as well. So if it's maternity cover, if it's for illness cover for a project, yes, you can go at the end of that. But if you're bringing an ops director in as a fixed term contract, you don't like them, but then recruit an ops director straight afterwards. That's not a fixed term contract.
No.
And we're into unfair dismissal claims at that point, and that is a huge issue in that space. I think people will think they're boxing clever. Yeah. But they will be putting themselves into the right all brown smelly stuff as a consequence. And I think that's the big worry for me is people. We come across a lot of people that go, it's full Baldrick when you deal with them. and they've had the most cunning plan. Yeah. And you kind of sit there as your jaw hits the ground and you kind of go like, what on earth have you done?
This is it. And I think C-suite level is probably one of the biggest concerns because, like you say, takes longer in terms of seeing that return on investment, seeing if they're hitting the ground running and if they're doing what they need to do. They are going to be more expensive to get rid of because the statutory cap is going, and so if you hit that unfair dismissal threshold, you're there. But also there's not the oversight on the day-to-day. There's a lot of free reign at C-suite that means that there's a lot of risk in terms of how do you work out if someone's doing a good job.
And that comes back to behaviours. So that comes back to get your critical success factors, understand what your behaviours you want, and it's the what are people doing? Yeah. What are they actually going out and engaging in your world? And it's understanding what's important in that role. And people sort of know, but are quite passive about it at this moment in time. And they go like, yes. But again, I think there's a couple of unintended consequences of this. I think people will be less reluctant to hire C-suite. Yeah. I think, or not less reluctant, but if it's not right, I think one of the things is that I think we'll see people go at 5 months a lot more. Yeah. I've had a few back and forths on people with this where I actually think people will work really, really hard in the first 6 months to make sure they get the nose over the line. And then you probably see a big drop off at the 6 month part.
Tell me you're a cynic without telling me you're a cynic.
That was not me, by the way.
But this is it. I mean, it's going to create this shift in terms of culturally how we're dealing with these things. But the biggest risk really is not conduct issues, it's performance. Because someone ticks over into that 6 months, performance management takes a decent
6 to 9 months realistically. If you're going to go if you're going from a standing start, and you then go to full pro, it's realistic 6 to 9 months. Yeah,
depending on the seniority of the role and how quickly you can kind of measure these things. So the reality is that that's your investment time.
But then that's the probation period, because again, if to your point if you give people that plan. You give them the critical success factors, or you can give them sort of the outputs that you need to see. Yeah. If they're then not performing against that, you've done all the lead. If you know, you've hopefully made a good decision by that point. But if you think you've seen enough, and there's sort of trending just below it, but then drop off, you've at least got a great.
We've been through this. Here is our map. But this is where claims come from as well. Is people who feel like they've been blindsided with a decision that they weren't expecting. So let's say you've been plodding on in your probation period, no one's checked in with you, you've got no metrics that you're being measured against that you know of, but people are thinking that you're not doing a good job, but no one's bothered to tell you. Probation dismissal comes out of the blue, or, you know, effectively, if you aren't aware of it, you're going to start thinking, what's this motivated by? Because no one's told me I'm not doing a good job. Yeah. And that's when your discrimination complaints come in. That's when it starts to be motivated by all these other things. But the big sense of injustice is what brings the claim. You know, claimants aren't sat there thinking like, I'm going to bring a claim because this is a textbook, this claim. They're like, I am mad. Yeah. And I'm going to find avenues to pursue my anger through the courts, right? So having that checking in regularly is the difference between someone being disappointed but getting it and understanding versus someone who is like, the day this company hired me is going to be the biggest mistake of their life, and I'm going to take the ringer.
And it's the amount of times what we're dealing with, and you deal with as well. It's not, you're not dealing with a technical claim, you're dealing with emotion.
Yeah.
And there's, we both have our own way of dealing with that, and it's like saying, well, okay, let's take that emotion, let's put it in a box over there, let's kind of try and take this out of this conversation, and let's then try and have a conversation about what's actually going on in this situation. And this is the bit where, again, if you, like we say to people, like sometimes we get asked to come in and deal with issues, and we'll say to people, like, we're not the right person. They said, because you've not engaged with the process, you've now brought us in to hide behind at that point. If you want to take the sting out of this, you've got to deal with this yourself. So actually, sitting, putting me in front of someone going, hiya, you know what I mean? It's one of the
I've been sent in.
Yes. So I'm here to be punched. So that, but that fronting up bit is massive.
Yeah.
And I think that's the bit where I think it's to the curiosity, it's engaged. And you can be so engaged now, because if you're not, you're going to be in absolute a world of trouble. Because if you tip over to that 6 months, like you've either got to invest a huge amount of time to try and get the situation either back on track or to exit them, or the next stage that you're looking at settlement agreements or funny redundancy processes to get people out. And with the redundancy, like the change of redundancy legislation, it's going to be harder to do that. Yeah. Not everyone's going to have these lovely unique job titles that you can do that. So then we get into the world of settlement agreements, which I think is going to be, I'm not even sure which way this stuff's going to land.
It's really interesting. So look, we've gone through recruitment, we've gone through onboarding, we've talked about what a probation period needs to look like, and now we're at the point where it's not gone great. So what do we do? And look, under that 6 months, fine, you're in the clear, make your short service dismissal, move on. Yeah. I mean, I know you're shocked, but...
I know. Well, to be honest with you, I may as well stick with this long to drop it.
I know. So, look, settlement agreements for that post 6 month stage. The reality is that unfair dismissal awards are still, on average, not that big, regardless of cap.
Yes.
So the average unfair dismissal award is something like £14,000 in terms of compensation, which isn't huge, right? But there's going to be those outliers, C-suite, more senior, bigger earning packages that as a result of this cap being lifted are going to be more expensive. But the reality is it's going to come down to how realistic it is for that person to walk into new comparative work at the same rate of pay.
Yeah.
That's where your loss comes from, and that's where your tribunal award comes from, and that's where your value of your potential claim in settlement comes from.
Yeah.
So we've been advising a client recently about a payroll person being dismissed, and it's like, right, it's not industry specific work, they're going to walk straight into another job, no concerns there. We wouldn't pay more than sort of maximum 3 months compensation, pay as compensation in that sort of situation. But where it is, let's say, a lifetime C-suite board member in a very niche area of business where it's been a career for them, they've only ever been there aren't comparative businesses that they can jump straight into.
Yeah.
That is where it's going to be huge.
Yeah, and I think the C-suite one's probably more interesting, and that's the bit where you need more than 6 months to really assess them. You certainly can't get into the FTC space with that. In the past, that you knew you could limit losses because, again, even if you just dismissed, generally for packages that people are on, it was cheaper to lose a tribunal and unfair dismissal claim than it was to settle with people at times. That will kind of really catch people out, in my view. And I think realistically it's anyone earning probably 70 to 80 grand or above. Yeah. The negotiations that you'll have with people moving forward are going to become a lot more complex. I think people need to get more comfortable with settlement agreements moving forward. I am intrigued as to how we value it, and it's maybe for a lot. You were doing settlement agreements with lower level employees. Yeah. I also think the ones that are a bit suspect, and you don't want to take someone to a solicitor to have that conversation. So we work with the client to work out kind of how well or poorly a situation has been run. And we'll have a conversation with them about kind of whether we use ACAS to do it.
This is such a beautiful loophole in terms of getting an ACAS settlement versus having to go through
a solicitor.
Yeah.
And there's certain things that I think it makes more sense to go via ACAS, because in fact, like, I do actually love the ACAS early conciliation team. I think they're great people, and I think that they're under the cosh. But as a consequence, they're not going to go too deep into a claim with someone. So there's certain details that you can probably kind of whiz past if you do that. A lot of people get spooked by the ACAS early conciliation piece because they think that ACAS are going to jump in and be like,
or that there's going to be a consequence for it for not having engaged. And one of my favourite things is to be able to be like, no, you can do exactly what you want here and it does not feed into anything. Yeah.
The only issue I'd say with the ACAS team is about speedy response. That's like, you can...
I had a phone call yesterday from ACAS saying, oh, you know that settlement offer you made? I can see the final hearing was 3 weeks ago. How did it go? I'm like, yeah, no, it's all right. I mean, I'm glad you rang me because we found it really well because we won. But if you'd have rung the claimant...
different story.
No, you're absolutely bang on. It's just, it's difficult, isn't it? Where you probably want to decide on your settlement strategy as a business. What are you going to offer as standard where it comes to, I mean a standard, but you don't want to create a settlement culture of these outlandish, standard, without prejudice conversations with every process. It's still, you can still go through a fair capability, conduct, redundancy process. But if you want a shortcut, maybe come up with what your framework is for, to avoid redundancy, we'll offer an enhancement of X and stop people from thinking they can. You don't want to encourage it in the business any more than it is.
No, and we'll talk when we do settlement agreements, we'll talk to people about dual running a process. So you'll go through some, if not all, the capability process.
Oh my God, I love hearing this because everyone who's like, oh, we're in negotiation, so we just stopped.
No. So
I'm like, no, you can't.
So sometimes what we'll do is that we'll start the capability process, get it to a point where we've there's at least you can demonstrate the substance in that situation, and then you introduce the settlement, which it's. And I think this again, this is the if you get really invested in the onboarding probation process, success program for the team.
No, sorry, success program.
Success program. I can think of Adam Buxton's Success Pod. But if you do your success program for people, then you've done a lot of the heavy lifting for that. So if you do, for whatever reason, go beyond that, because again, the other thing as well is that in the past, so if someone's gone off sick during probation period, you could pause the probation period, and then you would then, and then you could then pick it up and you'd be all safe. Doesn't matter now.
No.
And you will have to make if someone goes off sick, it's early engagement on the sickness issues as well.
You need to be underway, don't you? It can't be the point where you are starting to bring in management of it at the point that you want to dismiss. You have to have set that framework. But one of the things in terms of settlement agreements as a whole, factor it into your workforce planning if it's something that you want to leverage. The hardest thing is going to be those performance issues. And one of the things I say to my clients all the time, so if anyone is listening, I'm sorry because you've heard this so many times, you need carrot and stick. You need the exit package is the carrot. Obviously, it's the enhancement, but you need to have something to back it up to say, if you don't want to take that route, that's absolutely fine, but we are underway with this and we're in control, and not putting the ball in the individual's court to start dictating how this is going to go.
No, I've come from this morning. We've had a call with a client this minute, and we're looking at potential settlement with them. And it's that we were saying to them, you've got to, when we have the discussions with the individual, you can be very explicit around about what happens if they don't take the agreement. Yeah, and they've got to realise that they're between a rock and a hard place in that discussion, and you've got to take the best decision for themselves. Yeah, given all circumstances.
But on the whole, apart from those really high-profile roles that are much more expensive, earn a much bigger salary, etc., the lifting of the cap for me feels more like a psychologically bigger deal than it should be in practice day to day for businesses. Unfair dismissal awards are not that big generally. No. So,
and I would say kind of as a costing, I'd sort of allocate you'd have notice plus somewhere between sort of 2 to 3 months' salary.
Depending on how quickly they'll get into another job.
Yeah.
And then one of the other things that's been coming up from my clients is when the law comes in, will someone who's already been dismissed be able to recover? And it's like, no, they have to be dismissed after the 1st of January to have the benefit of that statutory cap being lifted.
And then I think the other thing about the 1st of January as well is about what happens this summer as well. So again, we've not a huge amount of conversations about this, but we're definitely getting mood music from people that there's a lot of people going to review under 2-year people during the summer.
Well, the financial institutions have just been hemorrhaging people left and right.
Oh, have they?
There's been mass sackings going on in the London financial district just to get rid of people who will have chunky claims by the time that they want to come and deal with these things come January.
And I think the other thing that people need to be wary of as well is that if it needs to be on performance if you get rid of people. Because again, if you do it on restructuring, if you hit 20 short service dismissals, you're then into collective consultation at that point, again, depending on some of the specifics. So again, if you do the 20 dismissals and think that everything's going to be
it's
fine.
like, guys, it's fine, I've got this, everyone's gone.
Yeah, what would be really nice, we'll massage a few egos, we'll make it about restructuring. But if you hit your thresholds, then you've got to go through your proper process at that point.
So basically, people, if you've got low performers or mid performers that aren't where you need them to be, you need to be starting now.
Yes, and you need to be dealing with it now, getting those conversations going. Have a very, very honest discussion internally about kind of where you want this to land, and how much weight you kind of put behind people to either improve, or you make a decision to say, actually, there's a different route for this person in the business, unfortunately, and they need to go somewhere else. So
it's a bit of a time to do a bit of a stock check, see how you are.
Absolutely, and I would probably want to be, if I were a business, depending on notice periods, you'd want to get it all wrapped up probably by the start of October. In truth,
'tis the season.
Yeah, you don't want to be. I don't think you want to be hitting December and still be making a ton of short service dismissals.
No, and the other thing is that generally speaking, the tribunals don't have this flexibility necessarily legally, but when they can see someone's done something because of an impending deadline, tend to find some flexibility in some other areas to see if they can give someone an award. So one of the biggest example of this is, 2-year unfair dismissal. But if you sack someone in their notice, in the equivalent of their statutory notice period before the 2 years is up, they're counted as 2 years.
Exactly. And I think people that are going, who are still making short service dismissals in December, and they go, it's okay, they've got a pile on clause. That's not going to land.
No. In terms of how this is going to impact the market, clicking. How do you think this is going to impact people? Hiring is going to be harder. It's going to take longer if you're doing it right.
Yep.
So do you think people are going to move away from hiring, trying to look at promoting talent internally?
I think the initial feedback we get from a lot of people is like they're going to do everything they can do not to hire.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see a lot more associate and subcontractor agreements come in place. Certainly with people that don't qualify for IR35, they'll have opportunity. I think you'll see more people coming through subcontractor agreements.
Yeah.
But then that brings a whole new perspective of issues, and again, people get tied up about IR35 when they don't, and they don't look at the deemed employment issue, which is the bigger issue.
Yeah, huge.
So again, it's understanding what you need to do in those situations. I think we're going to see a lot of people shooting from the hip at 5 months, and I think my worry is that I think people will still not get the message around about that early intervention. I think people will not move as well unless they feel sure. I think good people will not move, and I think it will be harder to entice people away that aren't particularly kind of got a high risk appetite as well. So I think it might put certain salaries up to get people across, or commit. So people might go, if this doesn't work out, I want a certain commitment within that I'll get X amount of notice if I go as well. So I think people might try and barter on notice periods as well.
I'm expecting for businesses to start paying more to keep people in. So let's say you've got a candidate who's fairly senior in the business that gets an offer to go and start at X company. Businesses are probably going to have to fork out over the odds to retain and motivate and to remunerate to keep that person in the business, rather than take the risk on rolling the dice and seeing what they get through recruitment.
Yeah.
And probably longer notice periods, like you say, in terms of, is 3 months long enough now?
There's a lot of companies who are in the blue collar space, thinking like the Everys of this world type thing, who I think that they'll just be in carnage, because they'll have high attrition anyway. Partly it'll be driven by them, partly it'll be driven by sort of people leaving.
Is driven a pun that you're using there or not?
No, it wasn't actually. I'm just unintentionally that great with everything. But there's a lot of things like that where you kind of sit there and go like, oh shit, this could get very...
There's definitely going to be particular businesses that are hit by this harder, but it's just going to result in more claims, more backlog, ACOS not be able to speak to anyone. That's a long time to stay that mad about something if you've not been there that long. But
then I think that always goes back to, and without taking everything back to tribunals, but if you're going to do that, it's if people then try and raise claims, you go, you know what, we'll see you in 2035. Because
just make sure that you've still got evidence and someone to respond to it.
Yeah.
Chef's kiss.
But again, even if you've not got that, it's the bit where I think the threat still sits there.
Yeah.
And you won't be the only person in that boat either.
But the only thing we've not touched on that's like my golden tip for employers at the minute is building your evidence. So we've talked about having a proactive process.
You're such a solicitor at times.
I mean, there is nothing worse than being presented with a brilliant defence, but you don't have any evidence to support it at all. But basically, tipping over to that 6-month mark and making that dismissal decision, you will need something you can point to that says, this is why I did it, that you wouldn't necessarily expect to have. Like when we talk about performance, things like that, like you say, you need those measurable targets, you need to be able to demonstrate how they're not achieving them, and being able to defend a claim about performance when you're just like, you're not the right fit, but it's tipped over into 6 months.
Yep.
Is not going to be good enough.
No. And I think, but again, this all comes back to onboarding.
Yeah.
This all comes back to, if we take it seriously, call it what you wish, call it probation, onboarding, people success.
Please let us know what you call it, because I'm now fascinated to see what people come up with.
Yes. And it's, I think the more that you've got that, it's all documented, whether you do lovely forms or whether it's just to go, you have a meeting with someone and go, here's a nice email where we go, thanks for your time today, here's what we talked about, can you make sure you do this, I'll do this for you, Bob's your uncle, you know. I want to say the next part of that. Just realised what that was. Bob's your uncle. But it doesn't, but to your point in terms of building the evidence, is that if you're building the file, it doesn't need to be some bombastic kind of letter going like
something more than nothing.
And it's all that traceability of things all the way through, so you can turn and go, we've done the right thing. The problem here is not us, we've done the right thing. Yeah. It's you. So if you do all that, then it's all fine.
How to Consciously Uncouple by Alastair Swindlehurst.
I've been told to do that a few times, but I think it was a bit more choice language when people said it to me.
I mean, Gwyneth Paltrow, what an icon to bring that into. I use it all the time. An Uno reverse card. There is nothing better than an Uno reverse card in employment strategy. You think you've got this? Well, Uno reverse. Yeah, there we go. I think that's us then.
It is. I was going to say, thank you for your time. Oh, I did get an anecdotal 5-star review from someone. So Ian from Bramall, you know who you are. As we said, this is the shit that you wouldn't normally listen to, but he gives it 5 stars.
Aww.
I was going to say that's amazing.
Thanks, Ian.
I was going to say, if you need any questions or anything, if you want to kick the tires or anything, give Rachel a call, speak to myself. If you want to get in contact with myself, it's alastair@ezhr.uk, or you can find us at ezhr.uk as well. And
you can find me on the Horsfield Menzies website.
So thank you for your time once again. I hope this has been useful. Questions are always more than welcome, and we'll see you again soon.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.
You're joking. Not another one?